welcome everybody. As we wait for folks to come in, we're going to launch a little poll to find out who we have with us. Okay. All right, so we have, let's say about half of us are students and half researchers, professionals and other. But whatever your background is, thank you for being here today. We're very happy to have you here. And welcome to this installment of Transferring the Business Gene, the Blue Bio Techpreneurs webinar series. My name is Ethan Holliday. I'm a European projects manager at the Pôle Mer Bretagne Atlantique, which is a maritime cluster, innovation cluster in France, and a partner on the Blue Bio Techpreneurs, project. And so our project aims to give students and recent graduates the inspiration, the information, and the skills that they need to go towards careers in the blue bioeconomy. And so we do that through three different activities, kind of main activities: the webinars, in which we talk to professionals working in the field now to give you all a sense of what a career really looks like in the blue bioeconomy. Then we have a MOOC, so a massive open online course that is free. It'll be coming out this fall, the first portion of the course, and we'll have several more courses that'll come out in 2025. And these cover issues of entrepreneurship, as well as broader issues and specific topics in the blue bioeconomy. We also have a series of hackathons where students can work with professionals on concrete challenges in the sector today. And so we're really happy to say that we just completed our most recent hackathon in Denmark. So I see that we have some of the participants joining us today. So hello, this is our group picture. We're in near Odense and Svaninga Bjerge, hosted by the Southern Denmark University, and things went quite well in terms of some numbers. We had about we had 27 participants with 7 mentors, and they came from a wide variety of backgrounds and nationalities. We had 22 nationalities represented, and you can see the list of the different countries of the nationalities, participants, and their institutions. And most importantly, it was just a really fun group, and it was a really fun 48 hours. And we also had 6 challenges from the sector, and we will display those here as well, the owners of the challenges. Next slide. Yeah, so a big thank you to everyone who participated, and know that our next hackathon will be happening in Poland in June, and so we're quite excited about this. So to keep up to date on our project activities, you can follow our website here. Yeah. And so today, our topic is circularity and sustainability in the blue bioeconomy. And so we're going to be hearing how businesses today in the blue bioeconomy are implementing innovative solutions to improve the sustainability and circularity of their processes. And I'd like to start out with just a poll on this. You can go back to the previous. Yes. So a poll on how compatible do you think private sector work is with an engagement for environmental sustainability? Okay, So yeah, so we have 10 say mostly compatible, 14 say mostly incompatible. And so we hope today to share with you uh, some paths toward combining this engagement for environmental sustainability with a successful private sector community. And uh, we are delighted to be joined by two great speakers. So Johan Ljungquist, CEO, co-founder of the Swedish aquaculture producer Gårdsfisk. Welcome, Johan.
Thank you. Thank you. So it's good that you
Yeah.
say that we're good speakers even before we have started. So that's great. Put the pressure on. It's no worries. So it's
Yeah.
some weeks
And
a year. I think this is my presentation number 6 this week. So I even have been in
all
Ireland
right.
and presented the stuff. So
Yeah.
it's gonna be nice and it's really nice to be here. But of course I'm gonna share you a little things about our journey so far and what we have done. And I think that you can change the slide to the next one. And the background that we actually had from the beginning was, of course, we were students. I'm a marine biologist, and my colleague Mikael, the other co-founder of Gårdsfisk, is a civil engineer. And I've been working for some years in Norway, and I saw all the challenges, of course, with the industrial fishing and with the aquaculture. And of course, the more you read about what we're doing to our oceans, the more you see, or the more you want to do to make something out of it. And of course, and then you also have the things that globally they want us to eat more fish, both because of the environment, but also because of the health, because fish is good to eat. And they have some global goals that we should actually increase the aquaculture production with another 100 million tons from today's 100 million tons. And then if we look what we have done to our oceans with pollutions, microplastics, decreased pH, increased temperatures, overfishing, we probably have destroyed everything that we had and could do something with. And that leaves us with the aquaculture to pretty much handle how can we produce fish in the future. And you can change the slide here. And so we were starting a little bit backwards. So we were actually looking into everything that we were thinking was a big challenge in the future, but also a big no-no, how we shouldn't do it. So of course, in Sweden, we use very little antibiotics within the husbandry, and of course we didn't want to use anything with the fish, so we wanted to choose robust fish. So the choices fell on tilapia and catfish, which you can say is like grass-eating fish, because we already have tried 100% vegetable feed for them, or plant-based. Um, we have had fish for 10 years and we have never used antibiotics. The worst thing that we have used is like salt to treat a small fungus infection like 8 years ago. So that's pretty much what we were using, and that's what we aim to continue just using. And like I said, we wanted to have omnivorous fish. We wanted to use freshwater fish because if we need to go into sustainability, open cages in Norway where you actually waste nitrogen and phosphorus directly out into the oceans, that's quite insane, according to us. So if we're using freshwater species, then we can integrate agriculture and aquaculture, and we can actually use the water twice, first as producing fish and then as irrigation, and then of course every manure from the fish is landing on the fields as well. So we're having like a balance between how much fish we produce and how much land we need to have to the farm to actually produce the fish. And then from our marketing team, they of course they have added that the fish is tasty. We had no idea when we started that the fish should be tasty because we didn't know, and easy cooking as well. And that was also something that we had no idea about. But both tilapia and catfish is, compared to the Swedish species that we eat, really easy to cook, even for those who is not that good. You can cook them. It's not like cod, 40 degrees inner temperature. You can cook it like to 75 degrees Celsius. So and still it's really good. So it's really good fish to eat. But when we were, you can change the picture there, Ethan. But when we were starting, we had all these kind of big visions about producing the most sustainable fish in the world. But we had, like probably many other students, we didn't have any money and we didn't have any farm. So we had to start somewhere. And everything is starting with, you need to have the guts, of course, to dare, and then you need to find a way to move into the project. And for us, we had some subsidies in Sweden, but of course, it wasn't enough. But we still wanted to start and do something about it. So I think that we took salaries for the first months, and then we just had to stop that and just focus on how do we make the project the best way possible with the small amounts of money. So we had around 180,000 euros to rebuild a complete farm in 18 months with 2 persons. And it was supposed to be for salaries as well, but we didn't. You can change the picture. Um, and if you look into these pictures, we were presenting our idea 2014 in the aquaculture conference in Sweden, and we were pretty much laughed at because they were asking questions. Who's going to build the farm? We're going to rebuild it. Who's going to build the systems? We are. Who's going to produce the fish? We are. And who's going to sell the fish? We are. So I would say that there was a lot of I wouldn't say nasty words, but very close to it, that this is pretty much a failure that's going to come. But we didn't think so much about it. We just went to the farm as early as we could every morning and just wanted to do as much as we can. And then finally, hopefully, we would be done with everything. So this is actually our growing out stable. So before they had like pigs, some cows, some horses in here. So we had to dig out 220 cubic meters of concrete and sand just to be able to stand like with the full size and have some kind of environmental climate in there, so we actually could have tropical fish. And now it's going to come some pictures that actually will show that you need to put the effort into the projects if you decide to go. So you can go with the next picture as well. So not only the inside, we also had the outside to change the roof of the building because there was probably more holes in the roof than we had pans on it. So this was the first roof that we ever changed, 420 square meters, and still one of our biggest chairs when we were done. And like all true entrepreneurs, we were really good into the safety stuff. No, we weren't. So you cannot see on the woods here that every second one of them was breaking when we were climbing up there. And we were always thinking that we will fall down and land quite soft on the hay. But when we were done and take the hay away, they had all of the old machines there. So it was quite good that we didn't fall down. And because of our journey, we did, I would say, a little bit different. I don't know how it's in other countries, but in Sweden, many so-called entrepreneurs, or especially within the aquaculture sector, they start to brag about everything they're about to do. And we were thinking a little bit about the difference, that we start with doing, and then, of course, then we can take a discussion about what we have done. And that was pretty much quite hard because when we had started, we got the local radio here and then the local newspapers, and that has resulted in, like, I don't know, 200 plus articles. I think that we're in 7 different books with 2 articles about entrepreneurship at Lund University. But everything comes to then that you need to put the work in. And even if we get a lot of questions to go for inspirational lectures for entrepreneurial programs, we always say that if you find your vision, you're prepared to spend probably 24/7 about solving the challenge, and probably without salary. Then someday you might call yourself an entrepreneur, but you need to put the effort. There's no shortcuts. And if we take the next picture, uh, so this one symbolized a little bit what we looked like the first 18 months. It was 12 hours a day, just construction, just to be able to actually produce the first fish. And somewhere around 18 months into the project, we also got the interest from the farmers in Sweden. First like 30, and then we had a couple of hundreds, and now we're up to a couple of thousands. But we also saw that it's not only us that sees that this is opportunity for the agriculture to actually integrate the aquaculture. And now we also, I think that we have had a bit over 80 different countries that has visited us here. And we're also starting to find how can we contribute to sustainability by building a concept how we actually produce fish. So if we go to the next slide, you can see here that we are pretty much a normal farm, not so different from farms in Sweden, of course, the Nordic countries. I also know that when you go to the countryside in Europe, it pretty much looks the same. You have your animals in the stables. You take care of the manure, spread it on the fields. You take care of the nutrient-rich water, and you keep the circularity within the farm because we need to use nutrients to produce plants. We can't just waste them into some kind of recipient, and that's for us within the blue economy. It's for me myself, it's really hard to understand that we are so great within the agriculture and there are so hard regulations how you actually produce both plants and animals. But within aquaculture, it's pretty much that you can have an open cage, you can have a land-based facility, and you can let everything out. And for some reason, it's a little bit unexplainable. We often say that if you just take like a big platform in the ocean and have pigs, and then you just let everything into the oceans. No one would ever have agreed upon that. But for some reason, fish is okay. So that's why we need to do it differently. So we actually at the moment have a concept where we have farmers on contract. So the farm that you see is our first farm. We have the hatchery for both catfish, tilapia, and jade perch, and we hatch every fish there. We're running the breeding program, and then we grow the fish to around 40 to 100 gram, and then the fish moves out to the farmers. They live at the farmer's site until they're at slaughter size, and then we get them back, and we have all of the process at our farm, fillet machines, and pack the fish for food service and retail. So we have a quite vertical chain where everything is handled by us. So the only thing that we're missing at the moment is actually a feed factory. Otherwise, we are quite as much as a tech company. And we can take the next picture. We have also seen that, of course, it was also a reason that everything was expensive in the beginning, but you also need to, I would say that it's often better to have a project with too little money than too much money, because then you really need to think about what you're doing. So this is a picture of our first contract stable from a farmer, pretty much a standard size. We build everything in modules. So every module is 8 tanks, and that's also due to that we need to have in control over every animal, and if something happens we should be able to treat one tank, one line, which is 4 tanks, or 8 tanks, which is one module, because then we can take care of the fish in a really good way. And due to legislation in Sweden, we really need to see all of the fishes, because if someone is hurt or something else, we should be able to pick it away. So if someone has seen those like 30 meters wide fishing tanks, you can't see the fish within them. And if you then have a cage with 6,000 tons of salmon, of course, you have no idea what happens within the cage. You notice it when the sea lice takes the lives of the fish, but then it's a little bit too late. So within this facility, we built all the tanks. We stole that pretty much from IKEA. Instead of using fiberglass, we build everything in 100% PE plastic that is recyclable. So everything comes in flat packages, and then we weld them on site, which means that we need one truck instead of 30 to get all of the equipment on site. We build drum filters, heat pumps, UV units, degassers. A little bit also because we're a little bit cynical, because we're coming from the side, we're not salmon producers, and a lot of the equipment companies is co-owned or owned by other aquaculture companies, which means that if we grow too much, we would like to have our own equipment so we don't depend on too much others. You can change the picture there, Ethan. One other thing that is really important for us with circularity is that we need to control the data. So everything that we do is controlled by our own software. So we actually collect data from everything that the farmers does, so we can follow the fish, both how much they eat, and we can control the flow, the light, when it's service, everything is able for us to pick in, but also to decrease the amount of work for the farmers. So if we have some issues, often we can program some pump or something else to decrease the amount of work that we actually have to spend in the farm. But also the big thing, like I said, with data is that the more farmers we get, we have 5 at the moment external, the more data we get, and then we can pretty much go down to a tenth of a degree, which is the best to produce the fish. And if some farmer is a lot better with the FCR, feed conversion rate, or something else, then we can apply that on everyone else, and then we increase our sustainability as well and get more efficient. So with the catfish at the moment, we're already down at 0.92 in feed conversion rate, and fish is, there's no other animal that is comparable within the agriculture compared to fish. So within one stable, we can produce 400 tons of catfish in only 1,200 square meters. And if you compare that to the trawling that Sweden had before in the Baltic Sea, we were allowed to trawl 1,100 tons of cod in the Baltic Sea. So which means that we need around 3 stables to produce actually more fish than we control in the Baltics before. So the ones that say that we need to trawl is just bullshit. And one of the biggest lakes here in Skåne, 2,400 hectares, the fishing is 10 tons a year. We produce 10 tons of fish in one tank. So, we let the fish be in the lakes and in the ocean, and then we have the big production on land because we need to take control over how we produce fish. And I think you can change picture again. So the big thing for us has been building the systems now. We have a platform that works really well, both with the techniques, but also with the regulations, because nothing in Sweden was actually regulated before, not in the way that we wanted to have it. But the big thing for us was to let the Swedes eat catfish and tilapia. So that's our main threshold at the moment to increase. But of course, first year we were selling about 50 kilos of fish, and now we're up to over 400 tons and increase with about 50% every year. So hopefully we are past that threshold, and they realize that this is really good products. But of course, we also had to make meatballs, because Swedes love meatballs and catfish tastes like meat. So we have actually meatballs that taste like normal meatballs. So that's a winner, especially for the kids. And then we also have, like you see there, some labels from Sweden. Swedes really love stuff from Sweden, so that's an important one. You see the A with 2 dots. It means that it's pretty much called the real deal. It's because we want our kids to eat the fish 7 days a week without us thinking about something else in it. So it means that we have no E numbers or any shit in the products. So they are clean. And the one in the middle is the one that we're maybe the proudest of. It's a climate certification, because we don't think the standards for ASC and the organic ones in EU is good enough. And they are also getting too big that it's pretty much too much lobby work, and if you pay, you get it. And of course, we have asked the question for the organizations how you can have an organic salmon from Norway when you let nitrogen and phosphorus right into the oceans, and it's no answers. And for us, we can't even have an organic certification because we have the fish on land. But it's the same. If you have a salmon on land for a year, you can still put it out in a cage, and then you can have the certification. So it's pretty much steered by the lobbyists, and that's not fair. So we went our own way, and we worked together with Sven Seal, and we actually, I would say that we have the hardest stamp on our fish in the world. I think there are 71 different points where we regulate how to treat the fish, how to transport the fish, how to net the fish. Everything is regulated just so we are sure that we treat the fish in the best possible way, and also how we slaughter it. So every single fish from our site is actually handled by a bolt gun, and then we cut the throat. So every fish is actually slaughtered one by one, which means that we know what we're doing with the fish. And if we look at the wild fish in Sweden, it's not regulated in the legislations, which means that you can pretty much let a fish die in the trawl or on deck or whatever. no one is taking care of the fish's welfare there. You can change the slide. And we often compare like this, because if you have carnivorous fish, I often say that if you go into a bank with 500 euros and you get out with 100, then you think it's a quite bad deal. And that's pretty much what we're doing with the oceans at the moment when we're producing carnivorous fish. We fish a lot and then we get actually less fish back. And it's the same for us in the Baltics. We fish a lot of the herrings and then we just make fish meal and fish oil, and then we feed salmon and other carnivorous species, and we actually get less fish back. And that's not sustainable. We need to produce fish where we actually get more fish than we actually feed them fish. So our FIFO, fish in, fish out, with the tilapia is 0.17. And with the catfish at the moment, I think they'll be around 0.6, and we're getting better. So we actually get more fish out when we're putting fish in the feed. So that's something that is really important for us. Yeah, you can take the next slide here. So I would say that we started from nothing and have been running through all of the regulations and of course techniques and building a brand, and have a quite broad business model with everything from the tech development, hatchery, and of course everything that farmers need, and then process and sales. But that's also something that you need to fight for your idea, because otherwise you will never success. So it's a lot of persistence and hard work, then you will have a great working life, even within the blue economy. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Johan, for that presentation, and for all the blood, sweat, and tears that went into making your company happen. I'm sure our viewers have lots of questions, but we're going to get to those toward the end of the webinar. So as questions come up, you can go up to the right-hand corner. There's
Yeah.
a question box there. So it has a little question mark. So if you put them there, we will try to get to them during the Q&A, and then otherwise we'll try to get you answers after the webinar. So thank you, Johan. Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Alexandra Leeper, CEO of Iceland Ocean Cluster, and their wonderful initiative, 100% Fish.
Good morning. Thank you so much. What an inspiring presentation from Johan. It's wonderful to hear your journey. It's really a pleasure to speak to you this morning, particularly around the topic of sustainable and circular business models, because that's very much at the heart of what we focus on at the Iceland Ocean Cluster. Maybe you can see my slides. Excellent. Perfect. Yeah, so and maybe just to say from myself and from my own background, I've had the opportunity to work all across the blue economy, from a background in marine biology and diving, and then into seismic exploration, and later into land-based aquaculture, actually, which is where I really got a big passion for fish, particularly great then to hear Gårdsfisk's story. And now I'm focusing on business innovation in the global seafood sector. So I'm happy to share with you a little bit of that this morning. Maybe you could put to the next slide. So I thought I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Iceland Ocean Cluster for those of you that don't know who we are, and tell you about what do we do. And then I want to tell you about our flagship program, which is called 100% Fish, which is this idea of not wasting any of the precious seafood that we catch and we farm, but instead transforming every part of the fish, so not just the fillet, but the heads, the skins, the bones, the guts, smartly and thoughtfully transforming it into different types of value, and kind of feeding into this circular economy thinking. And then I particularly wanted to think about, as this program expands into the global context, what does that mean for the global circular and sustainable economy and business? So if you could go to the next slide. So we are based in Iceland, in Reykjavik, Iceland. This is the Iceland Ocean Cluster House. It's about a 3,000 square meter building right on the harbour. And the house itself and the cluster was founded in 2011. And it was really founded to solve one of the biggest challenges in the fishery sector in Iceland, which is very much the base of the economy here. And that's that there were lots of large fisheries companies that were really not in dialogue with one another. There was quite a lot of competitiveness between them, even though many of them were facing similar challenges. Maybe they were even selling to the same overseas customers, but they were not in conversation at all. And likewise, they were not in conversation with entrepreneurs and innovators that had really great ideas, but maybe were developing those ideas at home in their garages or their spare rooms, and weren't having the opportunity to kind of match solutions to the challenges as well. So the house was formed and the cluster was formed to be both a physical space and a community to open the dialogue between the different fisheries companies and between the fisheries companies and those entrepreneurs and innovators, and also the research community, and bring everyone together to collectively solve some of these biggest challenges and really drive progress and innovation in the blue economy, particularly for an island out in the North Atlantic. This has been really key to Iceland's blue economy. When the house was first founded, about 10 companies came in to kind of join this community and to join this environment. And now in 2024, we have 70 companies, so 70, from brand new startup with a cool idea, often students as well. We work with a lot of student groups that want to test something and build their concept, to big international companies like Marel, which is the biggest in the world for fish and poultry processing equipment. And having these combination of new, fresh ideas and then very established, mature companies brings around a huge amount of benefit as well. And we work all across the blue economy. We are participating in European projects, for example, Blue Bio clusters with Paul Matt here, as well as doing business and science consultancy. We angel invest in good ideas, and we actually have sister ocean clusters all around the world that are with the same focus as us, which is creating sustainable value for the blue economy. And you can go to the next slide. So our flagship program is 100% fish, and this is, like I said, really about not wasting anything, the zero waste concept, but instead transforming it into value, with the kind of core concept being that something that works, businesses and innovation that work, need to make both environmental sense as well as economic sense in order to function and have legs, as we say. And in this case, in Iceland, moving towards using every part of the fish, not just the fillets, but the heads, the skins, the bones, the guts. This took a huge amount of collaboration between the innovation sector, the research sector, and the industry. And what that meant in Iceland meant going from using about 45% of every fish, so really just the fillet, which is what was traditionally eaten, to more than 90% of every Atlantic cod, and using each part, the heads, the skins, the bones, the guts, etc., in the most smart and appropriate way, both environmentally but also to maximize value so that it makes sense for those businesses involved. And I kind of wanted to take you a little bit on the journey of what does 100% fish look like now in Iceland and where it came from, because it really wasn't an overnight success. I really like the expression that Johan used. There's a lot of guts to dare there, and there are a lot of steps over time that have led to the value that we now see in Atlantic cod. So if you perhaps could put the next slide. So here in Iceland, the kind of the drive behind a lot of this change in thinking that kind of forced more of a circular mindset around the fisheries was that there were quotas put to manage the sustainability of the fish stocks. So it meant we were going from catching around 450,000 tons of Atlantic cod to around 270,000 tons of cod. And so the fishery sector suddenly had a lot less volume. They couldn't be a volume focused industry purely. They had to reimagine, okay, well, this is what I am landing. How can I maximize the value? And if you want to put click the next bit of the slide. And this really started with thinking about, okay, well, how can we improve the quality, the storage, the handling, the value of the core products, the fillet? But it very quickly moved to more innovative thinking. And that's kind of the first maybe lesson that I would share from this, was that the ideas that made sense to start with were those low-hanging fruit ones that didn't take too much time to get off the ground. They were easy wins that built confidence in these kind of new value chains for the seafood sector, and also they didn't take too much change to the existing supply chain and processing chain to be easily uptaken and to make this a quick growth in value. In Iceland, one example of that is that there has always been a traditional culture around drying the flesh of the fish as a snack. It's called hartfiskar. We eat it with a lot of butter on. So all the technology for drying fish, the culture around drying fish, the supply chain around drying fish existed, but the heads of the cod, these were being thrown away. They were going to landfill and breaking down because there just wasn't a food culture around the heads. But all the technology to dry them and do something with them existed. So in this case, what it took was finding a market and finding people that were interested in dried fish heads. And now these fish heads are dried actually using geothermal electrical heat, and then they are shipped to Nigeria, where there is a big culture around dried fish heads. And likewise, too, I think you can put the next slide here as well, that building kind of ideas around what makes sense both on small scales and large scales to be accessible. So, for example, the cod livers have been traditionally canned in Iceland. This is a cod, they store most of their fat in their liver. It's a very tasty part of the fish, and they were canned and sold. But when there was this kind of reevaluation of, okay, how can we do more with that? How can we make more from that? The discussion turned to, okay, well, maybe we can cold press these cod livers into cod liver oil. And this was done even in remote communities in the northwest of Iceland on small scale, and then well marketed. Marketing is a really important part of this conversation as well, as pure Icelandic cod liver oil. And again, being an easy win that can get off the ground. But then equally, we have very large scale companies in Iceland that are doing cod liver oil at scale. And in these cases, when we're going from canned cod livers to this pure virgin Icelandic cod liver oil, that's increasing the value by fourfold. So it really does make economic sense, as well as meaning that there really is an incentive to land those livers and not lose them out to sea or not waste them at the processing stage. And another aspect too is kind of building on heritage and traditional culture, and that has been really important in creating momentum for some of these newer value chains, or say renewed value chains. So in Iceland, as well as in many countries around the world, there has been a traditional culture around tanning fish skin into leather. But this has now been reimagined, and actually Iceland has the largest scale fish skin tannery in the world, and they're using much more science in how to improve the texture and the waterproofing, and even making very large pieces of fish skin. And this means we can go from a fish skin that used to be thrown to landfill to one that has a value of about $50 just as a piece of tan skin. But then you have companies, and it's very mainstream now, companies like Gucci and Nike that are using fish skin detailing, and of course the markup there is a really different picture. And by building up these easy wins and these what we call lower hanging fruit that are fairly easily uptaken, there's a lot of confidence built to kind of climb higher in this value pyramid to ideas that take more time, they take more capital investment, they take more research to develop and more innovation. So, for example, there are companies that now use the enzymes from the gut of cod. You can put the next slide here as well. They use the enzymes from the gut of cod, trypsin, into cold pre-treatment sprays, into wound care and skin healing, which took more research and took more time to develop, but that the momentum had already been created for these more circular business models, and the kind of the proof that it can make economic sense, and these tangible products already exist to tell that story well, and it makes it easier when you're going to talk to investors in this case too. And then just to say, it's one of my favorite stories in Iceland around fish skin valorization, and is also a collaboration that happened between entrepreneurs, a group called Codland, that came to the Iceland Ocean Cluster, and they saw how much fish skin was still being thrown away, and they really wanted to do something with it. So with the Iceland Ocean Cluster, they built a business plan in discussion with the research community here to extract collagen and gelatin from that fish skin. And because they had a very strong business case that not only made environmental sense, but it also made economic sense, they were then able to pitch that to the industry as to some of the biggest fisheries in Iceland that then invested in the idea. And because then they had this combination of resources, the cod skins themselves, the financing, the robust science and the business planning, it meant they could move very quickly. So it meant that a marine collagen industry emerged in Iceland that's vertically integrated with the fisheries sector as well. And then that all of this really laid the foundation to doing very advanced, very high innovation ideas that take long time and really patient capital. So here you can put to the next slide. In fact, I think you can probably do 2 clicks. Yeah, one more click as well. To ideas like Keresis, which actually this is a company that they were at the Iceland Ocean Cluster's first founders event where they were pitching this concept of transforming cod skin into a skin graft and looking for investors at that time. And this company now is a wonderful success story because they are Iceland's first unicorn of that's a unicorn being a startup that's valued at more than a billion US dollars, and they actually sold last year to a Danish company for 1.3 billion US dollars. And while this, of course, is a great win for that company, and actually the product itself has a huge amount of social value for treating burns and diabetic sores, and is really a great example of the blue bioeconomy in high value action. The products like this also have transformed the way people think about seafood and, I say, waste in inverted commas, because if something this valuable can be created, then why on earth do we throw anything away? And kind of echoing the sentiments of Johan, and none of this needs to be wasted. We can capture everything and do something valuable with it. You can go to the next slide. So in Iceland, this has meant transforming a single Atlantic cod that used to be worth about 12 US dollars to a single fish that has a potential value of almost 5,000 US dollars when we look at all these different ways to smartly use every part of the fish. And this is really exciting. And what we're doing now is taking this model that has been so functional in Iceland and with Atlantic cod, and we're exploring how can this be adapted all over the world. So we've been working in the Great Lakes in the US and Namibia in Africa. We're working in the Pacific right now and all over Europe as well, and partly through our sister ocean clusters as well, to understand, okay, what are the concepts of 100% fish and what are the aspects of this community that have been successful here and what can be transferred. So I just wanted to hop to my next slide. And just to say that what's been really important here, and I think it is key too in building sustainable and circular businesses, is that there needs to be a very clear value and vision for everyone involved. And I think on the global scale, we have a very clear mission that we just can't afford to waste as much like seafood, valuable biological material that we are wasting. So this is actually data from the World Economic Forum released earlier this year, and they looked at the global fisheries supply chain, seafood supply chain, and how much loss and waste was happening across the supply chain. And here they estimate more than 23 million metric tons of edible quality seafood is being lost and wasted. That's including discards and across the supply chain. And what we see here in this data, and I have to say I'm using this almost in every presentation I'm giving right now because it's so very clear that actually regardless of where you are in the world, across every area, the most of this waste is happening during the processing stage on land. So we very much have a common mission globally of where waste is happening. There is very clear evidence of types of value that can be created. And again, this is edible quality seafood. So there's so much that can be done for both socioeconomic value here and also environmental benefit from looking at this from a more circular perspective. And having this clear agenda that often we do get asked, how do you get different companies or different countries or kind of competitive groups sat down together at the same table, but by having a common challenge and a point where mutual value can be gained is really key. And for me, this is such a clear example of that. So on that note, I hope I haven't gone over my time. Thank you very much. You can pop to the last slide. It's just my contact details if you have any follow-up questions after this, and just to say thank you very much, and I look forward to our discussion.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that presentation. I think um, I think we have both a lot of hope, some really impressive uh, figures, and really surprising and innovative ways of valorizing, uh, uh, as you said, parts of the fish that perhaps traditionally went to waste. Um, but, yeah, it's really uh, a tremendous initiative. Um, and I guess one question that I had for both of you, um, related to kind of the challenges that you face. So you talk about the importance of finding kind of common value, really emphasizing the economic value of these processes, in addition to the environmental um, value. Um, uh, what do you see as the barriers that are still there? Kind of the external external barriers to pushing these concepts further and really seeing them take off and applied more widely.
Johan, did you want to start with that? Or
Yeah, I can just take a little bit about. Of course, it's really interesting to see how much you try to do with the fish, and I think that's one of the really big important things to do, that we actually take care of the whole animals, know whether it's a fish or some other animal that we're gonna eat. But I think that it's a little bit of laziness within the industry, of course, but also within stores or retailers. We need to do it in the right way, and I think that's uh, yeah, the main thing at the moment, that we need to take more good decisions. And of course, a lot of companies or people, politicians, everyone wants to put like the work on someone else. So if a retailer say, we need to sell this fish because the consumers demands it, but everyone needs to take the hard decisions to actually change something. So if we can do the change, and of course consumers is really important to take these decisions themselves, of course, but sometimes I think that we need some help from the politicians as well, that if you're gonna like do the industrial fishing, you should take care of the whole fish. You can't just take the fillet and the rest goes to fish feed, because if you can get important enzymes or something like that, you should do it. So I think that harder regulations, both within how to treat the catch, but also how we treat the environment, because then we will finally get rid of those who won't do it. So I think that it's a combination of hard decisions and in every level within the society.
yeah, I think I probably would echo that. It's definitely a combination of things. That I think, I mean, there are always lots of challenges i- in and around changing people's opinion and changing people's mind. And I think that's particularly the case when we go to a new place. And fisheries in general and seafood does tend to be quite conservative industry. So I think by having, I say I'm a scientist by training, but more and more I see how important storytelling and angle and marketing in a way is, because it's a case of saying, okay, well, these are the easy changes for you to make. This is why you should make them. But it also is about building trust. And I think that's always something that in some cases does get overlooked, because you get these many groups, and it was the same case in Iceland, but we've seen the same as we work in the Great Lakes and now in Alaska as well. I didn't mention this. Just across different groups as well. We're actually also working with sludge and aquaculture from land-based farms. I didn't mention it, but bringing these groups together for the first time and doing that in a way where they don't feel threatened by one another, or they don't feel like being at the same table is actually causing more conflict than it is resolution. I think this trust building is a really uh, is always a challenge, and I think a big part of what we do and also we kind of advocate for is um, really bringing people to the table with their expectations managed, with a really clear idea of who is there and what's being discussed, and really a very clear picture of what is the value of being at that table together, and in some cases taking those conversations quite slowly to start with. As frustrating perhaps as I'm an impatient person, so I'm always like, let's just do this. But I think it's a really key part of that is trust building, getting people to the same table, and really getting things started. And that's also why we push for these low hanging fruits and easy wins. Because if you can get those easy wins, it helps to build that trust and it helps to build that confidence in the idea as well. And it doesn't take so much time. We get a lot of people that go, cod skin grafts, excellent. We should be doing biomedical. It's super high value. But of course, if you're going from actually throwing things to landfill all the way through to a biomedical application, it takes a huge amount of time. It takes a huge amount of innovation. It takes a lot of really patient financing. And so this isn't really an appropriate jump. And then people get frustrated. It's like, oh, well, we can't do 100%. It takes too long. So I think here it's also choosing the appropriate steps in the appropriate order. So lengthy answer to your question, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's that's really great. Yeah, and so yeah, what I'm hearing is kind of for now we have these really let's say cutting edge applications, but there's still a lot of groundwork to be done in the let's say even more straightforward uh, applications. And I was wondering where you all see and the I suppose the most potential uh, for positive change. What I guess what area do you see as requiring the most energy and effort?
I would say pretty much everything because there's so much work that needs to be put in through the whole chain. Um, and one hard thing to when you're an entrepreneur, and we have quite strong thoughts about a lot of things, and sometimes entrepreneurs we think that it's a lot more easy than it might be, but of course it's again up to the hard decisions that we actually need to do something, and it's not only within the seafood, because it's pretty much with everything that humans has some kind of, I don't know, vision about that we're going to solve everything in the future. And you all have probably seen that pretty much every politician and CEOs, they always have goals that is set probably beyond when they're going to end their work. And that's because they don't want to handle it themselves. So we actually need to start doing it today instead of like, oh, 2050, we should have done this. So it's better to take the small steps and go, of course, towards a bigger goal, but we need to do it. And often we have, big discussions in Sweden is, for example, like, and all over the world, it's that more and more people getting heavier. And often we have all these kind of information about which food that is unhealthy, but still we don't take the decisions about doing something about it. How do we eat more healthy? So I think it's the same within the seafood industry, that it's conservative, and in some ways it's quite terrible sometimes that we don't actually do more, and to see numbers that we actually waste like 24 million tons of edible stuff. It's We can start with using that, then we actually need to catch or produce 24 tons less, and my numbers that we should increase with like 100 million ton, then we have already saved 25% of it. So we have a lot of the answers, but we are, I don't know, we don't see the forest of all the trees. So
Yeah. And I'm getting so we have several questions from our audience, and I'll direct those individual questions to you as well. But I guess do you all see at least some positive movement in public perception, or in your fields, or let's say even as consumers, let's say as consumers right now, what can we do to contribute to the success of these initiatives? Are there common labels we should be keeping an eye out for? What's the easiest thing for consumers to do?
Should I start?
Do you want to, and then
I
maybe
don't.
I'll say my
Yeah,
positive side. I've got a
yeah,
little.
yeah.
Okay.
The positive, if I start with something positive as well, is that we see that there's a large interest of everything that we do. So I think that we will actually start seeing movements in the right direction quite soon. Then if it takes like 1 or 3 or 5 years, when we get even more sustainable aquaculture, but we will go there. And then as a consumer, it's especially with fish, it's a jungle, because even if we have the certifications and stuff like that, I don't even think that the ones that actually write the certifications actually know how they work. And to follow like a MSc certification, and then the next week it could be gone. So I would say that education, try to learn about what you're buying, and of course the closer the stuff is produced to where you live, then at least you lower the transports. But when it comes to fish, so think a little bit more like you think within when you're eating meat. Like the lower the traffic level is, the better often the climate change is. And then of course, the lucky ones of us that lives in Europe and can have a lot of choice how animals are slaughtered and stuff like that. uh, yeah, you can read a lot, but do that, educate you more, and then you can take wiser decisions. So learn more about what you're eating.
Yeah, I maybe would echo that from the consumer side. I think it is really complicated when you go into a store, you want to be kind of ethical and sustainable, and you're like, well, how do I do that? What does this mean? What does this label mean? I think from my side, just when I'm looking, I would agree, things that are local, you probably know that they've not been traveling so far to get there, but also as much as possible, ask questions and where possible, look at the kind of traceability of where has that come from, even if possible where it's been packaged, or or is it from lower down the trophic level? Is it from cut-offs? So, even just growing up, we smoked salmon's very expensive, so we used to have they don't sell them anymore, like the bags of the cut-off smoked salmon, and it's like, okay, well, I know this was a cut-off. I know also it's in my price range. Everybody's happy. So from this side, I think for me that the positive aspect is we do see a lot of momentum, lots of people asking questions, and getting to talk more activities like this. But I think we've in the past we've worked a lot with kind of European grants or working with governments around the world, and I think the energy now is transforming to being actually industry are asking how can they do this, trying to think about how can they do this at scale, and companies like Johan's that kind of transforming it from the commercial side, and I think that's extremely positive, and I think that's a change that even within my time as ocean investor, I can see is turning the tide.
Good. Yeah. So a nice note of hope there toward the end of the discussion. So we'll conclude with a quick word of advice from you. But before we want to make a couple of project announcements. So Maud, if you could go to the next slide. So yes, especially if you're a student or an early career professional, you can connect with people in the field, um, uh, uh, and discuss within a specific community within this platform, Blue Bio Match. So Early Careers Exchange and Talent Hub. This is a really nice platform. You'll have access to academics and professionals. You'll have a window onto innovative products. You'll have job postings. It's a really great platform. We encourage you to check out. And then also, we wanted to announce our upcoming webinars in the series. So if we go to the next slide as well, or I guess the one after. So on the 5th of December, we'll be discussing women's entrepreneurship in the blue bioeconomy, blue biotech for communities. On the 6th of February, and on the 3rd, you can join us for finding work in the blue bioeconomy. And so I'm going to share, I think we can't click through, but I'm going to share those links with you in the chat now. Okay. And you can maybe just go back one slide. And so just to conclude, Johan and Alexandra, and kind of a sentence, a quick word of advice, what would you say to someone who is thinking about starting a career in the blue bioeconomy, wants to make a positive environmental impact? What are your final words of advice?
Johan's escaped before. Yeah, I mean, advice is always a tricky one, but I think find something that you really care about, because as Johan said, impact and driving change takes a huge amount of hard work and energy, and that's so much easier to put in if it's something that you really care about, that align with your personal values, and also that you can keep the big picture in mind, because it can be very easy when you're toiling away in this narrow thing you kind of got into down the road further down the line to change the world, but you can't quite remember why because you've been looking at this microscope for days. But try and keep that big picture in mind of what the impact is, because that will also help you as you communicate what you're doing and why you're doing it. And if you can communicate what you're doing, why you're doing, and you care about it, it's going to be a lot easier for people to fund and pay you to do those things. So yeah. Thanks.
I would say that I totally agree. You need to find something that you actually love to do, because if you do it for money or for some other reason that you want to impress someone, you won't be successful, because it takes so much energy to drive a change, that you need to do something that you're actually really good at, or at least you want to become good at it. So I would say find something that you really want to do, and then finally, if you put the work, you will be successful. So never give up. That's the main thing.
Beautiful. Well,
And don't,
thank you both.
yeah,
Oh,
and
sorry.
I know it's no worse. And you will hear a lot like it's not possible.
Mm,
So listen to the
yeah.
ones that is positive, and try to the ones that think they know everything. Put them on the bench and just continue to work.
That's a great closing note. So thank you both so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to talk with us today. The recording of the webinar will be available online, so definitely feel free to share around. There were some questions we didn't get to, but we'll see if we can get some responses later on. And yes, we hope to see you at our next webinar and in our future project actions. So thank you everyone for being here. And if you would give us some feedback at the end, you'll see a little survey. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye.
Have a wonderful day. Thank you.